because service is going to start at 10:30 today, even just a few of us. Oh, this is the mayor, and he's not here. Oh, right. So for the last year, I don't know, we've been going through the book of Revelation. And so we're toward the end. God has 3 layers of revelation that he has shown us, like we're making anybody make like a banana pudding? I know they put a layer of just the wafers on the bottom, right? Then maybe you put the bananas, and then you put the cream, I don't know. But there's layers to it, the good ones.
There's cookies, bananas.
The bananas, whatever that, the pudding, right? Maybe there's a meringue on top of that. It all goes to make one thing. You don't eat it after the first layer is laid. You have to wait till all the layers are down. So God's like putting down layers, right? He first says, these are the 7 seals, and he kind of shows what's going to happen since from the time of Jesus' first coming to his second coming. Then he says, okay, now I'm going to have the 7 trumpets, and he kind of shows another layer. Then he says, I'm going to have now the 7 bowls that he pours out, judgment, and he's kind of showing and just adding layers. So he kind of starts at the beginning and goes toward the end. In this final layer, he's emphasizing more of what's going to happen in that 3.5-year period. That 3.5-year period where there's a false Messiah who's going to come. And the false Messiah will make friends at first with Israel. So Israel has to become a nation in order for this prophecy to be fulfilled. And for thousands of years, Israel was not a nation. So in our lifetime, we've seen Israel become a nation again, and this false Messiah is going to come. And first he's going to make friends with Israel, and then he's going to turn on them. So there are the Jews that are in Israel currently, and then there are those who have been scattered throughout the world. God considers them both Israel. So we know there were how many tribes? Jacob had how many sons? 12 tribes, right? The northern tribes and the southern tribes. Like we have Northern California and Southern California. Here you go. So how many tribes were considered in the north? There's 12 altogether. 10. You would think so, that these 6 and 6 would make sense, right? It was actually 10 and then 2. 10 in the north. The only 2 considered the southern tribes were Judah and Benjamin. Judah saved Benjamin's life way back when Joseph was in Egypt, and Joseph hadn't seen his brothers in years, and they came down to Egypt to get food, and they didn't know that their brother Joseph, who they thought was dead, was now a prince in Egypt. And they're standing in front of him, and they're bowing down before him, and he sees his brother, his little brother, Benjamin.
Benjamin was a baby.
I mean, right. Benjamin was the youngest. So Joseph sees his little brother Benjamin, and he wants him to stay with him, because the brothers don't yet recognize that this is Joseph. And he's going to give them food and let them leave, but he's afraid to let his little brother go with him, because they're the only 2 from that one mother. And he's afraid if they try to kill me, they're certainly going to try to kill him. So he puts something in his sack. And then accuses him of stealing. He stole. He's got to stay.
Right.
And Judah, who wasn't the oldest brother, but he was the leader anyway, he said, no, let him go, sacrifice, I'll stay here, I'll sacrifice my life. And that's actually the act that broke Joseph's heart, that broke that anger that he had. And so now he forgives his brother, and he reveals himself. But Benjamin stayed attached to Judah. It's like, ooh, you saved my life. It's like you're on the playground, and a bully's picking on you and somebody comes up and beats up the bully, you're like, well, I'm gonna stick with you. So Benjamin sticks with Judah. And when they finally all cross over to the promised land years later, the tribe of Benjamin was just right next to Judah. So that's considered southern Israel. And then the 10 other tribes of the north are the north. When they were scattered, God judged. So you know there was a church split, right? After David was king, do you remember who was king after David?
That's my fault.
Were you king? You said Solomon?
Solomon.
Say words that have sound. Solomon? Solomon, yes. You can say things out loud. I know, but I can't tell if you're right or wrong. Turns out you were pretty correct, right? Solomon, David and Solomon,
Yep.
and they were king over all 12 tribes. But then after Solomon, his sons, they had a fight, they had an argument, and that's when they were split. So you got 10 versus the 2. 10 versus the 2. The 10 were dispersed all throughout the world. They just wouldn't act right. The 2, they acted right half the time. For God, that was good enough. At least half the time they were trying to do good. But the 10, they were just crazy. So they were eventually scattered all throughout the world. They're still the children of Israel. It was Jacob's new name. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Jacob's new name was Israel. So they're still considered the children of Israel. But those children of Israel, they wouldn't consider themselves Jewish because the name Jewish came, that's what we call the tribe of Judah. We call them the Jews, and eventually they're just the Jews. Does that make sense? So Judah and Benjamin, that's where when Jesus was born, he was born in Judea, right? We consider them Jews. But those other 10 tribes, they're also children of Israel. God knows where they are. They were scattered. Some of them became kings of countries and all sorts of stuff. But they would not consider themselves children of Israel because they've lost their heritage. It's been so long ago. Like we're not clear. You may not know exactly where your ancestors came from in Africa. It was too long ago. You're clear by the color of your skin that it was probably Africa that they came from, but you couldn't say, oh, was this tribe or was that the, Well, they have no clue because their skin color doesn't tell them anything. So, thousands of years later, there are children of Israel who are out there. They could be senators in this country. They could be in England, Switzerland, South America. They just scattered all over. They're still the children of Israel. God knows about them. Africa's a country too. So I'm going to say this. They've scattered all over the world. Now, if you think that includes Africa, I do too. I just happen to say Switzerland and South America. But yes, in Africa, all over. They're scattered all over. I'm not talking about the Jews. I'm not talking about the Jews. So you could say there's some Jews in Africa. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about those 10 tribes who are still the children of Israel who were dispersed. They don't call themselves Jews. They never did call themselves Jews. That term Jews didn't come until much later after they were already gone. So they would never say, I'm a Jew. They would never say that. Because that means I'm of Judah. And they're not from Judah. That's not the tribe that they're from. So 700 years before Jesus was born, those first 10 tribes were captured and then dispersed and just have been spread out all over the world. They do not remember any longer that they are the children of it, that their ancestor was Israel. That's not how they identify themselves. They assimilated into whatever culture they became a part of. God knows who they are, but they don't know that their ancestors go all the way back. Does that make sense? So some of these prophecies that he's talking about, they're about them and not necessarily about the Jews. That means those two tribes, Judah and Benjamin. Yes, sir.
A quick point, when somebody pointed this out, when the house of Judah or house of Israel, they're referring to the southern troop or the northern troop. So when you read the Bible, you just come across house of, that helps you distinguish between who's talking about.
Right, and it depends on which point in history.
Yeah.
Because at one point they were all together Israel. After the split, then that's how God would distinguish it. He called them Israel and called them Judah. Sometimes he called them, do you know who the main tribe of the 10 was? Ephraim. So sometimes it will say, call them Ephraim. That's Joseph's line. Joseph had 2 kids, and he'll call him Judah. And he distinguishes between the two, because there was a northern and there was a southern. So some of these prophecies about Israel, he's talking about the ones that were dispersed. And sometimes when he's talking about them, he's talking about the Jews that live now in Israel. So it's kind of confusing, but we'll try to keep it straight. So Mary's not here to read. What's going to happen? We're going to just stare at the paper. Can everybody read? Everybody's not education in some way? Okay. Hold on. So, we just finished a vision of the 7th set of judgments being poured out. And now, there's a new vision about to happen, where the angels are going to start to explain certain things. Let's start with Revelation chapter 17, verse 7 through 15.
But the angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast.
Right, I'm sorry. So that was the next vision. There was a beast sitting on 7 mountains. This is not 7 different mountains. He had a vision of a beast sitting on 7 mountains. It's not 7 different mountains. It's the same mountain during 7 time periods. So there are 7 times. So the Jews were set on Mount Sinai, Mount Zion. And there are 7 different times that 7 different kingdoms conquered them. So there's 7 times in history where Israel was bad, and I'm talking about the whole of Israel, all of them. They were bad, and so God allowed a nation to come in and conquer them. 7 different times. So he saw a vision of a beast sitting on 7 mountains. But he saw a woman sitting on top of that beast. Now the beast is that spirit of Antichrist that always wants to destroy the Jews. 7 different times they tried in history to destroy them, to occupy them. But in this vision, the woman was sitting on top, like riding a horse. It's like, well, you're sitting on top of the beast. So you're in cahoots with them. So it's not just that these nations came and took over Israel against Israel's will. Israel kept doing something to allow it. So the woman is on top of the beast, and God's blaming them both. So now he's saying, I would explain to you what that vision means. So can you start that verse over, what the angel said to me?
The angel said to me, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns.
Right, so this beast had 7 heads, and again, that was 7 different kings, and the 10 horns. So he's going to explain it. Go on.
The beast that you saw was, is not, and will ascend out of the Father's pit and go into perdition. Okay,
so the 7 heads are 7 different kings that came and took over Israel. You sometimes cannot separate the king from the nation. So he just calls them both. You remember I don't mean you remember like you were there, but during World War II, Germany tried to kill all the Jews. There was the Holocaust, right? Hitler was the head of Germany. So Hitler, you wouldn't really separate from Germany. So sometimes God is talking about the head of the nation, and sometimes he's talking about the nation. But it's the same thing. Hitler got Germany to put all the Jews in concentration camps, so they're equally guilty, the king and the nation. So he kind of ties them together. So there were 7 different times that Israel had been attacked. But in this vision, the 7th kingdom, which had not come yet, he says there are 5 times that this has already happened. The sixth one is happening currently during this vision. The time of this vision, Rome had conquered Israel and had dispersed all the Jews and destroyed the temple. So that he says that's the sixth piece. But the seventh head is going to come. So if there's some kingdom, now that Israel is a nation again, that's going to make an alliance with Israel and then conquer Israel. That kingdom, he says, is going to exist for a time period, and then it's going to die. Or the king himself is going to exist and die, and then come back to life. And he's saying, you might call it the eighth, but it's really the seventh. It's that same kingdom. It just died and it came back to life. Does that make sense? So there's a seventh country that at some point is going to come and attack Israel. And that country was powerful, is no longer powerful, but it's going to become powerful again. So if Germany came back to life and suddenly became a world power, that would be an example of a country that Germany was about to take over the world, and then they lost. They were defeated in battle and became poor, and they put up the Berlin Wall. But if that country were to build back up and become a world power again, then that would be an example of it. It was the seventh kingdom that tried to conquer the Jews, then it died, and then now it's come back. So I'm not saying that it's Germany, I'm saying that's an example. So, yes, sir.
It says 7 is a completion, right?
Right,
Just has 7 years.
right. Yeah, so that's there. It's going to happen 7 times and it's done. So 5 times Israel has been conquered. It was conquered by the Babylonians, by the Persians, by the Medes, by the Greeks who were in Egypt, in Africa, and by the Greeks who were in Syria. 5 times. The 6th time was Rome. So currently, when this is happening, Rome is occupying Israel while John is speaking. While John's having this vision, Rome is current. So that's the 6th time. And Jesus says, it's going to happen one more time. There's a country that's going to come into power, then it's going to fade from the scene, and then it's going to come back and conquer Israel. And then it'll be complete. It'll be done. So that's what 7 means.
I thought it never gets to 7. Nothing will ever get to 7. Always will go to 6. It will never go to 7.
No. So I was saying that wrong. The devil never gets to make it. When he's showing the what's going to happen on the 6th one, that's when the devil comes into power. But on the 7th one, he loses. So it's not like he doesn't make it to the 7th. He loses in the 7th round. So the 6th, he looks like he's powerful. So that's why he says his number is just 6. He only don't work because 7 is coming, and that's when he's going to lose. So if you take his mark, if you start to worship him because you're in the 6th day and you think he's going to win, hold out to the 7th day, because that's when Jesus comes back. So don't think that 6. He said, don't think that 6 is the end. So when this Messiah comes and takes over the world, don't think this is the end. Don't give in and say, okay, I'm going to worship him, and don't do that. Because 7 is coming. 7 is coming. And that's when God's judgment will be complete. Okay, so here is the mind which has wisdom, verse 9. I think that's where you... Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I'll start at 8.
8, yes.
The beast that you saw was, and is not.
And is not.
And will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go into perdition.
Into destruction. So it'd be like he went to the bottomless pit. Is that his phone? Oh, okay. Sometimes you don't recognize your phone. You're just concentrating. You don't realize. Okay.
And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was, and is not, and yet is.
Right. So he was powerful, then it disappears from the scene, and then comes back. So don't marvel. Like, how did that nation become so powerful again? The whole world will marvel. Go on, verse 9.
Yeah.
Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kingdoms. 5 have fallen. 1 is, and the other has not yet come.
So we mentioned the 5 nations, the 5 kings. The one is Rome. The other one has not come into power yet. Go on.
And when he comes, he must continue a short time. The beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th, and is going to
Perdition. It just means destruction. So he's saying there's going to be a 7th kingdom. It's going to disappear for a time. It's going to be a threat. It will disappear. But then it's going to come back in great power. He's saying it's not an 8th. It's not a new one. It's one of the 7. It's one of the 7. Okay, go ahead. Verse 12.
The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no king as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast.
So when this nation attacks Israel, he's going to get 10 other kings to come along with him. So if, I'm making this up, if Iran attacks Israel, he's going to get Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Turkey, like 10 other nations to also be in league with them to threaten Israel. Okay, go on. 13.
These are of one mind, and they would give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them.
That's Jesus.
For he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw were the harlot sit.
So the woman, he's calling her a harlot, is sitting on waters. So he's about to explain what who the harlot is and who the woman was. We can already tell who the harlot is just because this was prophesied about in Hosea. So, young man, what's your name? I'm sorry.
Clayton is my name.
Clayton?
Yes.
This is when we're going to read about when God told the minister, the prophet, to go out and take a wife who was a prostitute. So we're going to read about that
Okay.
now. Right?
All right.
So I remember I mentioned that to you earlier. You think, wow, that's in the Bible. Why would God do
I
that?
said that? Did I say that?
Yes, you went, what? But that's okay. That was a long time ago. So, Hosea chapter 1, verse 1 through 3.
The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beer, in the days of
Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah.
king of Judah, and in the days of
Jeroboam,
the son of
Joash.
king of Israel.
So we got the kings of Judah and the kings of Israel. So Hosea is a minor prophet, not because what he said was minor, because he didn't write as much. Isaiah wrote a whole bunch. Jeremiah wrote a whole bunch. Ezekiel wrote like 40 chapters. There's certain prophets that just wrote a lot, and there's some prophets that just wrote a little bit.
Okay.
So they're called the minor prophets. He's the first of the minor prophets. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Zechariah, Micah, and Zechariah. There's 12 minor prophets who didn't write as much, but they were still just as important as the major prophets. So Hosea, today if you heard this name Hosea, what might it sound like? What would they say? I mean, that was somebody's name. That was somebody's name today. Jose, probably Jose. Jose, right. Which would also be Joseph.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so Hosea is also Jose or Hosea in different languages. It's also Judah. It's the same name. Jehovah. It's the same derivation. It's the same derivation. They just used an H because it depends who's translating the Bible. The Greeks, the Romans, they all changed the name to their own thing. But it just means Savior. So Hosea is trying to save his people and explain to them all the wrong they're doing. Hosea, he says he was prophet during the days of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, who were kings of Judah. He was a prophet in the north, but he hated the people in the north. But God made him stay in the north because he had a word for them. So God may have you someplace like, oh, so mad at all these people, but God has you there. So he had him stuck up in the north, right, so that he can warn all these people. So there were 4 kings. He was there during 4 different presidents, 4 different kings that came in Judah, and one that came in the south, whose name was Jeroboam. So he says, this is how long he prophesied. For 66 years, he was a prophet trying to warn the north to get their lives together before God did something to them. So God now gives him a drastic way God gives him a drastic way to make an example and to show them how they're messing up. So go ahead, verse 2.
When the Lord began to speak by Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, go take you yourself a wife of poverty and children of poverty, for the land has committed great poverty by departing from the Lord.
So I want you to go and get a wife who was a prostitute and have children with her, because the children of Israel, they have done the same thing to me. They committed. They're like prostitutes. They keep going after other gods, serving other gods. So I want you to do I want you to do this so you can illustrate. So who is Hosea representing?
Israel.
God. He's representing God.
Oh.
He's going to go with the prostitute. The prostitute is Israel. So God's saying, even though you keep whoring around, I'm still going to stay faithful to you. So I want you to go get a wife who is a prostitute and have children with her.
So Hosea is saying, committed to God, right?
Yes. Right. He's God's prophet there. So he speaks to him and says, so I want you to give an illustration to the people of Israel to show them what they're doing to me. Go get a wife who's a prostitute. Because I want to show Israel, you're that prostitute. But I am the prophet who's still going to love you anyway.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Verse 3.
So he went and took
Gomer,
the daughter of
the Blaine,
and she conceived and born him a son.
yes. So she takes him, he has kids with her, then she goes off and leaves him and becomes unfaithful. Why does she leave and become unfaithful? That's who she is. That's her nature. Give me like 2 seconds to think. Right. So she does it because that's who she is. So even though she's married to this prophet and has kids with him, she can't help but go out and cheat on him. And God says, see, that's how you are. No matter what I do for you, Israel, you keep messing up. So, Hosea chapter 3, verse 1 and 2. So she's gone and left him.
Then the Lord said to me, go again, love a woman who is loved by a lover and is committing adultery.
This is the same person. So I want you to go and do this one more time. Go and love the woman. She's now got a lover, and she's now committing adultery on you. So go ahead.
Just like the love of the Lord for the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love the rising
The raisin cake of the pagans.
cake of the pagans.
So apparently this was a delicacy. Usually the pagans, they loved them some raisin cakes. Go on.
So he brought her from himself for 15 shekels of silver.
Right. So this raisin cake, does anyone used to eat fruit cake? Remember fruit cake? Right.
Don't like it.
Some people make them. I had fruit cake one time, and there was more than fruit in it.
What we did, bro?
Yeah.
Put rubber in
That's what they put in the
Alcohol. I said one time. I'm not doing it right now.
I wonder why we get so busy.
So there was some alcohol in the fruit cake. Right?
Yes, I wonder why I speak.
Huh? They soak it in alcohol. I had some that was too much.
I ate too much.
You can smell it.
It's not good. This is the raisin cakes that they used to make. These were grapes, right, that were dried, and they would take the wine of the grapes and soak it, the cakes, in, and then all that was left was the dried raisins that they put on top. So it was basically a wine cake with some raisins on it. Does that make sense? They loved them some wine cake. We're going to have some raisin cakes tonight. So he says, you children of Israel, you're always looking to other gods, and you love to go to these other nations so you can have you some raisin cakes. So that's what he said, it's like fruit cake with too much alcohol in it. So he went and bought her back for 15 shekels of silver. There's a reason why there's 15 shekels of silver. Because once somebody owns you, well, let's look at Exodus chapter 21, verse 32.
If Yas pours a male or female servant, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned.
So if you got an ox and it kills somebody's male or female servant, you owe them 30 shekels of silver.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's how much slaves cost, 30 shekels of silver. And then they had to kill the ox, because the ox, apparently the ox is going around killing people. We do that today now. If a lion gets loose, now of course we're living in there where they, you know what I'm saying, people build houses up where the lion and the bear, that used to be their home. Suddenly you got a swimming pool there. So you're shopping when the bear comes down and gets in your swimming pool. It's like, well, this guy used to live.
Yep.
But he's in his own.
Right. You moved into my place. But what they do is once that bear or lion or whatever attacks a human, they feel like, well, we got to kill him now because they're going to start attacking people. So that's what they would do. If the ox killed a male servant or a female servant, you owe that person 30 shekels of silver, and they put the ox to sleep.
They're called robes.
What?
Robes.
Robe.
Robes.
Right. Right. But he only paid 15 shekels for her. Here's why. So let's go back. Hosea chapter 3, verse 2, and then 3.
So I bought it for myself for 15 shekels of silver, and 1.5 homers of barley.
So that was worth 15 shekels. The 1.5 homers of barley was worth 15 shekels. So I gave her 15 shekels, and I gave her some barley, and that added up to 30 shekels. So he bought her back. And that's symbolic of God who gives to get us back. He's trying to get us back. Verse 3.
And I said to her, you shall stay with me many days. You shall not play the harlot, nor shall you have a man. So too will I be toward you. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim. Afterwards, the children of Israel shall return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. They shall fear the Lord and his goodness in latter days.
Now, David had been their king earlier. He said they're going to seek David their king. Does God mean literally he's going to seek David? So he doesn't mean literally they're going to seek David, but they're going to seek after whoever I put in charge of Israel. So sometimes he would just use a name as an example to them. Because why say the real name? It won't make any sense to them. So if God gives you a vision of something's going to happen for 50 years from now, you may be standing next to somebody who you don't know in this vision. He won't tell you who that person's name is because it doesn't make any difference. He'll just say, you're next to the preacher. You're next to the teacher. He just gives an example. Because why say you're next to Sheila or Damon? It's like, who's that? So he says, there's going to be a time period where Israel is going to be without a king. And he's talking about the northern tribes. You're going to be scattered without a king, but at a certain point, you're going to return to me. So he's calling them a harlot. You're like a harlot who has been unfaithful. I'm going to sacrifice 30 shekels to get you back. But for a time period, you're just going to be kind of out there floating. And then finally, you're going to return to me and seek me. So when the book of Revelations is talking about the harlot, they're talking about Israel. They're talking about Israel. She's the harlot. God called them the harlot from the beginning. He said that you're the harlot, right? a lot of times when people read the book of Revelations, they'll tell you that that harlot is the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is the harlot, and the Pope, he's got, or they'll pick some group, whatever the latest group is. That's the harlot of Revelation. But the harlot is Israel. That's been scattered. He said, at some point you're going to come back to me. Okay, let's look at Hosea chapter 4, verse 1, and then verse 6 and verse 12.
Hear the word of the Lord. You children of Israel, for the Lord bring a charge against the inhabitants of the land.
So this is about the children of Israel. He's talking about the northern tribes.
There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. My peoples are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also will reject you from being priest for me. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children.
So he's saying, here's the problem. There's no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. Truth meaning you're hypocrites, you're dishonest. You say, oh, I love God, but you really don't. There's no truth. You're dishonest. There's no mercy. You're not loving people. You don't help me. You don't do what I ask you to do as far as feeding the poor. And there's no knowledge of God. You don't really know me and know what I want. He said, my people are destroyed because of lack of knowledge. It's still true today. Churches are dying, Christians are dying because they don't really know the Lord. We don't study the Bible. We don't know the Lord. This book is life to us. God's giving us all the instructions that we need. We do not know them. There are people who can tell you page 5 to paragraph 3 of the bylaws. They've memorized it. The bylaw says this. They'll quick to quote you the bylaw, but could not tell you what the Bible says about anything. So, he said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you don't know me. You're making up a church. You're making up a way to be. And that's not how I want you to conduct business. That's not who I am. But because you don't really know me, that's why it's easy for you to be led astray. So, you're adopting a lot of the policies of the world. You're adopting a lot of what the world says to do. It's seeping into the church because you don't know me. You don't know to say, no, God would never let us do that. That's not God. You say, oh, the world's doing that? We should do that. And it's eating away at the church. It's destroying you. Because my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Let's look at verse 12.
Oh, Judge?
Yes.
Before we go
Yes.
further, can I didn't know what you call or terror or what is that kind of terror?
Okay.
So, ephod is, in ancient Israel, it's a sleeveless garment worn by Jewish priests. In a terrapin are small images or coat objects used as domestic deities or oracles by ancient Jews. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Probably once a month, I explain what the ephod is.
Oh, okay, I don't care.
I know. So, because the Spirit of God only came upon the prophet or the priest or the king. Oh, you're not getting it. One of the ways that God would speak to them is that they would just have a couple extra. One of the ways God would speak to them is that this robe that they would wear would have different jewels on it. And they would light up. They would say, Lord, what are we supposed to do? And the robe would light up. One of the different jewels would light up. God, that was the way that God would speak to them and to let them know what to do. However, they weren't using the tools that God gave them to find out what He needed for them to do. Instead, let's look at verse 12. Anybody else can read too? Okay.
Okay. My people ask counsel for their wooden idols and their staff and form them.
So instead of using the ways that I told you to get knowledge from me, instead of like reading the word, instead of praying, etc., you go to your wooden idols and ask them what to do. Or you use your staffs and say, well, I'll just let my staff, wherever my staff goes, that's where I'll go. He said, you're using other ways to find out what to do instead of the ways that I gave you. You're looking to, well, how is the world doing this? How are they doing that? Let me read this book. And really, all the answers are in the Bible. Really, all the answers are in prayer or in the ministry gifts that God has set. Or you can, the Bible says you don't have need to anybody teach you. You have an anointing and God is inside of you and He will teach you if you just read His Word. But instead, we go to the self-help books, or we go to this channel, or this person, or whatever, and they're going to give you counsel, but it won't be from God. And when you follow it, it will seem to work at first, but eventually it will destroy you because God knows how He has designed it. And so He knows what we should do because He knows the future. You can try all sorts of stuff, but if not what God told you to do, it's not going to work. It won't work. So He says you're going to wooden idols and you're using staffs to inform them. Go on, for the spirit of harlotry.
For the spirit of harlotry has caused them to stray, and they have played the harlotry against their God.
So again, I'm making sure that we understand that when he's talking about the harlot in the book of Revelation, he's talking about Israel, especially those who eventually were dispersed. Because it doesn't matter to God whether you remember or not that you're a children of Israel. He still anointed you. He still has a call on you. So those Jews who were scattered throughout the world, those children of Israel who were scattered throughout the world, still He has extra special pressure on them. So, you to answer this to me, Troy. If your parents tell you, okay, we're leaving for a while, you can have a friend over, but I want to make sure the kitchen is clean, and make sure this is it, and they give you a whole set of instructions. When they come home, the kitchen's not clean, the living room's a mess. They're going to be upset, but who are they going to be upset with most? You or your friend? Why you? Because they told you, they gave you the instructions. So God is more upset at the Jews because He gave them the instructions. So you may lead somebody else astray. It's the same thing with the church. There's more on us because we know better. So if we were out drinking with our friends and doing stuff, God's more upset with us because we know better. So He's saying, I'm more upset with you, Israel. You're going to get more trouble because I gave you the instructions and you're playing the harlot. Okay. Finally, Hosea chapter 9, verse 1, verse 3, verse 17.
Do not rejoice, O Israel, rejoice like other people, for you have played the harlot against your God. You have made love for hire on every threshing floor.
So you've made love for hire on every threshing floor. You play the harlot all over the place, all over the world. So don't rejoice like those other people. They're excited when something happens. You can't be excited because you know what you should be doing and you're not doing it. Verse 3.
They shall not dwell in the Lord's land, but Ephraim shall return to Egypt and shall eat unclean things in Assyria.
So he's talking to the northern tribes. You're not gonna make it back. You're gonna be scattered. Ephraim is another name for the northern tribe because Ephraim was the main tribe there. Joshua, you remember Joshua and Aaron? Joshua and Aaron, they were Moses' sidekicks. When God sent the 12 tribes, the 12 spies into the promised land to spy out the land, 10 of them came back and said, we can't do it. But 2 said, we can do it. Joshua and Caleb. Sorry, not Aaron. Aaron was his brother. Joshua and Caleb. Joshua represented the tribe of Ephraim, and Caleb represented the tribe of Judah. Those 2 tribes came back and said, we can do it, we can do it. Okay? So when they finally made it over to the promised land, Joshua went north with Ephraim, and Judah went south. Caleb went south with Judah. So sometimes he'll call the northern tribes Ephraim. He'll call them Ephraim because Joshua's tribe was the main one who was the leader there. So he says, Ephraim, you're going to return to Egypt. You're going to go back to all that mess. you're not going to come back to the land. Once I scatter you, you're never going to make it back to Israel. You're going to go to Egypt and you're going to eat unclean things in Assyria. Meaning, you're just going to be flirting with all over the world and just be a mess. However, verse 17.
My God will cast them away because they did not obey him, and they shall be wanderers among the nations.
So they're harlots, but they're in every nation. So again, northern Israel, they've been scattered. They do not consider themselves Jews, because Jude refers to the tribe of Judah. But God has scattered them all over the world. And so there are people, like I'm saying, they could be, the mayor of Los Angeles, his descendants could be from Israel. He doesn't know, because it's been so many thousands of years since they were scattered. Because once they got scattered with those nations, they just assumed the identities of those nations. And so they don't remember that their ancestors used to be the Israelites. During World War II, some of the Jews, in order to escape Hitler, escaped to France and pretended to be French. Because if you were Jewish, they were going to kill you, find you and kill you. So they said, I'm not Jewish, I'm French, in order to save their lives. They had kids who had kids who had kids who were living in America now, and they're really Jewish and don't know it because their parents pretended to be French and told them they were French. And so I have a friend whose his name is Gousset, and it's French last name, but he looks like a Jewish rabbi. But he said, oh no, I'm French. I'm French. My family's been French, they're from France. But he looked like a Jewish rabbi. Anytime we ran into a Jewish person, they're like, yo, rabbi. He said, I'm not a rabbi. My family's French, what are you talking about? He finally had a DNA result, because I kept telling him, dude, you're Jewish. And found out he's Jewish. And that his family, had just lied. So I'm saying this to say that there are a lot of children of Israel out there who don't know that they're descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And many of them have come to prominence. Many of them have become businessmen and bankers and lawyers and doctors all over the world, and they're still descendants of Abraham, but they have no idea. God still calling them harlots because you're flirting with the world and you have left behind what I told you to do. So in Hosea, he called them harlots because you're flirting with the world. So in Revelation, he's still talking about them. That's that same group of harlots. Revelation chapter 17, verse 15 through 18.
Then he said to me, the waters which you saw, where the harlot sits, are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues.
Right. This is the harlot are the Jews who've been scattered all over the world, and those waters that they sit on are different nations, different people, different multitudes. They speak different languages, so they've been scattered. They're speaking Spanish, they're speaking Nigerian, they're speaking all over the world. Swedish, they've been all over the world. But God knows who they are, whether they know who they are or not. Go on. Verse 16. Lisa.
And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these will hate the harlot, make her desolate and naked, eat her flesh and burn her with fire.
Right. So in some cases, the nations are going to recognize, because the Jews themselves, those bottom tribes, they also were scattered. And I say the Jews, meaning those from Judah. They were scattered when the Romans came in 70 AD. And there are Jews who have been scattered all over the world. They also are bankers, lawyers, doctors, physicians, Nobel Prize winners, etc. When the nations recognize them, when you're from Judah, you're a Jew, a lot of the devil gets in people and they just turn on the Jews. The devil gets in them and they just turn on them, and they suddenly, we hate these Jewish people. They don't even know why, but they just feel threatened. That's the devil, that's the beast in them. So it says, they will hate the harlot, they will make her desolate and naked, they will eat her flesh and burn her. They will try to kill the Jews. In their midst, though, are also these children of Israel, their brothers, who they're not aware, and they also will be turned on and won't even know why. Like, why are they turning on me? I'm not Jewish. Well, surprise, you are related to them, and you don't even know. But the devil's going to have to turn on you too. Yeah. Verse 17.
For God has put into their hearts to fulfill his purpose, to be of one mind, and give their kingdom to the beast, until the words of God are fulfilled. And the woman whom you saw in that great city, which
Is that great city?
is that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth.
So he says God will make them of one mind. They're going to give their talents, give their gifts to the beast. The beast is the devil. But so if God is, let's say I'm a director, and God has given me this talent to create great films, but I realize I can either make, I'm just making this up. I can make a Christian film that doesn't make any money, or I can make a film and put a lot of naked women in it and shooting and blood and all this stuff in it, and then I'll make a whole bunch of money. So I go, ooh, I'm going to do that. So he says, you just gave your talent to the beast. That's the devil. You didn't give your talent. I gave you that talent, but you're using it for something bad. Right? Does that make sense? So it says, all over the world, they gave themselves to the beast to make her prosperous, to make the beast prosperous. At a certain point, God's going to judge them. And then that woman whom you saw, he said, it's that great city which reigns over the kings of the earth. That city is Jerusalem, who is the people from Jerusalem, people from Israel. God has put them in prominent places all over the world. All over the world. We have a couple Jewish people running for president, but that's just I'm just using that example. All over the world, God he blesses them because he said he would. He'd be blessed going in and coming out. Their storehouses will be full. Jewish people, whether they know they're Jewish or not, God has said, I'm going to bless you because I want that to be a sign to the world. So that people go, wow, why they're so successful? Because they love the Lord. I want to love the Lord too. God does that on purpose. He said, but he gives them their talent. Some are using it for good and some are not. So he's saying, that great city who reigns over the kings, meaning if you're from Jerusalem, no matter where you live now, God's put you next to kings and princes all over the world. All over the world. So, just to confirm that we never talk about that great city he means Jerusalem. He does not mean the Vatican. People keep telling me, oh, the Vatican. Like the Vatican is not in the Bible. Israel's in the Bible. Revelation chapter 18, verse 1 and 2a. We'll keep going.
After these things, I saw another angel coming down from heaven, having great authority, and the earth was illuminated with his glory. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is fallen.
So that great city, whenever he's talking about, sometimes you call Jerusalem Babylon, sometimes you call it Sodom, sometimes you call it Egypt, but always, or a harlot, he's always talking about Israel. This is that nation that I blessed. For example, in Revelation chapter 11, verse 8, I'll remind us, this is what he said about it. The two witnesses came and witnessed, and then they were killed. And verse 8 says,
And their dead bodies will be lying in the streets of the great city.
so what's the great city? He goes on to say,
Which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified.
so spiritually he's calling it Sodom. Spiritually he's calling it Egypt. Spiritually he's calling it Babylon. But the great city is the place where the Lord was crucified, which is Jerusalem. So he's letting you know, whenever God says, and it's Sodom, it's Egypt, it's Babylon, he's still talking about Israel. Because he gave instructions to Israel what to do. And when they don't mind him, he's more upset with Israel than he's with the friends of Israel. Because they have no excuse. Okay, so back to Revelation chapter 18, starting with chapter 2. Verse 2, the second part of verse 2.
And it has come, 18:2, right?
Yes, and so talking about that great city has become, go on, and has become, it's the second part of
And has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird.
And he's like vultures, go on.
And for all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. The kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury.
So he said Israel has become Not, so his people that he's chosen, whether they know they're Jews because they're from the bottom part, or whether they're part of the 10 tribes, the world has become rich because of her. Because I blessed these people, they've all become rich because, and they're luxurious, they have all this money because of how I blessed the children of Israel. But look what happens to them in verse 4.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. For her sins have reached to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. Render to her just as she rendered to you, and repay her double according to her works. In the cup which she has mix double for her. In the measure that she has glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow.
So just as rich as you've made it, that's as poor you're going to become. God is equal. He equalizes everything out. So, I'm sorry?
I just said, wow.
Yeah, if you become, he makes everything equal. That's the problem with God. He's just. So you got away with this long, well, the punishment is going to be just as equal to that. So you might recall, a lot of us were not affected in the same way in like 2008 with the stock market crash, because a lot of us didn't have stocks. So we went from making $40 a week to $39 a week. It was a drop. But there are people who, through devious means, some of them, made all this money and lost all this money, right? Just so God even things out. If that makes any sense. He's even things. He just evens stuff out. If you're trusting in this and trusting in that instead of trusting in God, He dries that up at a certain point. Do I know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put all my money over here. Well, did God tell you to do that? Well, no, but there's a man on television who said, okay. And then at a certain point, He dries that up. And so He makes all things equal. So the people who are listening to God, God says to them in advance, you know, you shouldn't take your money out of that and put it over here or invest it. God will tell people, I had a dream and God just told me to do it. And so, but the people who are trusting, who are not trusting in Him, He warns them. So if you've made your money in this bad way, I'm going to take all that from you. That's what you're trusting in. He just makes all things equal. Okay. So were you on verse 7? Or verse? Start over verse 7 again. I interrupted you in the middle of it.
Okay. In the measure that she glorifies herself and lives luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as queen and am no widow. And will not see sorrow. So I'm a queen. I'm married to the king. I'm not I've hooked myself to this person. I'm trusting in Harvey Milken. I'm just making names up. I don't remember the names of these people who a lot of people gave their money to and trusted in, and then the people went off with their money. That's happened several times, right? Where you put all your faith in this, and then that person's gone. So you're like a queen married to this king. You've chosen to make that person your king instead of God. Because God will tell you what to do. Okay? And she says, I'm not a widow. I'm not by myself. I put my trust in this person, so I'm not going to see sorrow because this king will never leave me. He won't just turn his back on me and run off with my money. I trust this person. Wow.
Therefore, verse 8.
Therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine. And she will be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judges her.
So during this time period, this 3.5-year time period, where this false Messiah is taking over and has proclaimed priests all throughout the world, at a certain point he turns on Israel. Literally, physical Israel. But also, in one day, fortunes are going to be wiped out. It says, plagues will come in one day. Death, mourning, famine. Just like, and we've seen bits of that, how the stock market fell so quickly. In one day people's fortunes were wiped out. God says it's going to be the same sort of thing. A lot of people are going to be putting their trust in certain things, and in one day it's going to be wiped out. in one day. Verse 9, the kings of the earth.
The kings of the earth who committed fornication and lived luxuriously with her will weep and lament for her. When they see the smoke of her burning, standing at a distance for fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city of Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour her judgment, for in 1 hour your judgment has come.
Right, now again, it's not literally Babylon. That's just, it's spiritually Babylon, spiritually Egypt, spiritually Sodom. But those, I gave these children of Israel, whether they're Jewish or whether they're from the northern tribe, I've given certain people in this world power to get wealth. The Bible says, I give you power to get wealth. He's talking specifically to the children of Israel. We as Christians like to take that in and say, oh, that's my scripture. But he was talking specifically to the children of Israel. He's given these people power to create wealth. Doesn't mean we can't have some money. Yeah. But there's certain people that he's specifically given power to create great wealth. And the kings of the world are trusting in those people, investing in those people, giving all those money. I'm putting it in this bank account over here. I'm doing all this stuff. He says in 1 hour, it's all going to come crashing down.
I just remember it was Madoff that took care of
Madoff, Bernie Madoff is an example of somebody who suddenly went off with everybody's money. So he says it's going to be that sort of thing. In 1 hour, they'll weep and go, oh no, what happened? And there'll be a huge stock market, worldwide stock market crash sort of thing, where everything will be wiped out.
You do know that they're predicting that the housing market is going to crash again in 2020, this year.
Really, the house?
Well, they're saying, yes, they're just saying that there's a bubble that's been created and it always goes up for so long and then things, it's just a natural correction when things get too high. This, of course, will be bigger than that.
Okay.
This is going to be a worldwide, all over, because God's going to do it in a big way. Because he's going to put out knowledge to people who are listening, and Christians will be, or Jews or whoever who are listening to God will say, you know what, I think I'm supposed to take my money out of the bank and put it in my drawer. I don't know why. Right? I'm just making that up. But people who are going to, oh no, I should give this, and this person, there are huge fortunes that are going to be, people are going to be trusting certain markets and certain things, and then in one day God will wipe all that out. In 1 hour, people will weep all over the world and lament and go, oh no, what's happened? But it's a sign. God says, I've warned you. I sent you prophets. I sent you witnesses who were saying, you better not trust these people. You better trust in God. You better do. So they won't be confused because God will send out warning. They'll be the people who ignored the warnings because they trusted more in what this man said and what the world said than what God, Spirit of God, is saying.
It's going to be worse than 29.
Right. You mean 1929?
Yeah.
Right. And these are just the warning signs.
Yeah.
These are the warning signs. These different crashes that have happened are just the warning signs. This will be a world from which the world won't recover. Because Jesus will come back. It'll take Jesus coming back for that recovery. But if you're trusting in the Lord and you're listening, He'll be telling you what to do. If you're trusting in man, then you're stuck. And that's what he says. You're trusting in wooden idols. You're trusting in all these other things to get your information from. And you're not trusting in me. So if you're Christians and you're praying, God talks to us. God talks to everybody. But do you listen? That's all the question. God's always saying, I told you what to do, and that person told you what to do. Something in your heart said, turn left, but that person said, turn right.
And then, not only listen and follow.
Yes, thank you. So I'm so glad my sister's here. So I was going to say, so then you're going to either turn left, that must be what you mean by follow. So you'll have the choice to turn left or right. God tells you one thing, and the world tells us something different. We always have a choice. The world says, but you make more money this way, but I don't want to invest in that. That's not, that's exploiting people, or that's, yeah, but look how much money you'll make. We always have that choice. So, and something in you can say, no, that can make you some more money. That's not right, because that's not a good thing. But, yes, sir.
But if you're poor,
I know it's tempting.
it's just,
Right, if you're poor, or if you're rich, it's tempting. But if something's telling you, don't do that, you can't later complain to God when it all falls apart. It's like, I told you what to do. You knew what to do. But you didn't listen, so you can't. All my money that I put in that porno film, oh, Lord, bless me. I was like, no, I didn't bless you. You knew what to do. You suffer. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of stuff. People come up asking for healing. God tells them, the doctor tells them, their friends tell them, stop drinking those sodas. I'm just making that, whatever it is. You know, your legs blowing up, your eyes falling out, but you just one more thing of sugar, right? And then you get this horrible diagnosis, and let me go to Jesus, and it's like, what? I told you 20 times. I said 19 people. Everybody you knew said stop doing that. So I'm not going to bail you out of that. You're going to have to suffer because you've been disobedient. And God makes sure we're not rewarded for our disobedience. Because if He rescues us instantly, then that means, oh good, I'll just be disobedient and God will just rescue me. And I can be disobedient and God will just rescue me. And I'll be disobedient and God will just rescue me. Right? That's not good for us. If every time your child disobeys you, you gave them a cake, what are you teaching them? It's okay to be disobedient because I win. I don't ever suffer. So sometimes it's important for God to give us the consequences of our disobedience. It's important for us. It's important for any child. We spoil them too much. It's okay. They need to suffer for a while. Stop rescuing them, or they never learn what consequences mean. So God's not going to give consequences to the world for its disobedience. We are on verse 11. Yes, and we'll finish.
And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. And the merchants of these things, who became rich by her, will stand at a distance for fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city that was clothed with fine linen, purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in one hour such great riches come to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who travel by ships, sailors, and as many as trade on the sea, stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like this great city?
Go on.
Hold on.
Go on.
They threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and wailing and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she was made desolate. The light of the lamp shall not shine in her anymore. It shine in you anymore, and the voice of bridegroom and bride shall not. I don't understand that. Let me read it again. The light of a lamp shall not shine in you anymore.
Right, so that makes sense.
Right.
I put a light on you. People were drawn to you because I put a light in you on purpose, because I did give you the power to give wealth. But you used the wealth for nasty stuff. For weapons of war and nasty structure and sex and violence and blah, 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 blah. So that light's not going to shine in you anymore. Also, the voice of the bride and the bridegroom. Who's the bride and the bridegroom? Right? The church and Jesus. That voice will not be heard in you anymore. You had great wisdom because it was God's voice speaking through you. You were telling people, you should invest over here, you should do this, and it was all working. That voice won't come out of you anymore. So, and the voice of the bridegroom and bride.
And the voice of the bridegroom and bride shall not be heard in you anymore. For your merchants were the great men of the earth, for by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and saints, and of all who were slain on the earth.
So this is the warning. The merchants and all those people who trusted in you, who said invested with you, this is part of my punishment to you, Israel, for not listening to me, for trusting in yourselves. You know what your heritage is, and yet you're using all of the power and all the resources and the talent I gave you for evil. So it won't work anymore. In 1 hour, it's all going to fall apart. But in you also was the blood of the saints and the prophets. I sent saints and prophets to you, to preach to you, and you killed them. People who said, stop doing that, you shouldn't be doing that. John the Baptist came and said, you shouldn't be sleeping with your niece, and what's wrong with them? And you killed them. So all the punishment that's now coming on you, you can't say, why is this happening? It's because every time I warned you, you killed the people that I sent to warn you, and you did bad with it, and so now it's time for your punishment. And it's been storing up. We want to be judged instantly. We don't want God to store it up. Like a snowball coming down a hill that gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The longer it takes for God's judgment to come, the bigger. We want to be judged instantly. We want to mess up and go, okay, thank you. But as God's delaying and delaying, and we keep thinking we're getting away with stuff, we get farther, and God delays, when that consequence finally comes, it just knocks you out. So it is better. That's like somebody who, I feel something funny in my liver, but people say, you should go to the doctor. Nah. A year later, I just feel funny here, but you should, right? Nah. Well, you waited 10 years. So when you finally went, they go, I'm sorry, the cancer has spread all over your whole body, there's nothing to do about it. If you had just come, a year ago, we could have done it, but you waited and waited and waited and waited, and now it's too late. Does that make sense? So if we don't listen to God, when we finally, the judgment comes, it's too late to do anything about it because we're too far gone. We're too far gone. So this is the warning that He's given to us in the last day. Be careful, because there's a way to hear God and there's a way to hear the world. And when you're listening to the world, He calls us harlots. We're like prostitutes who are flirting with the world. We're being unfaithful. We want to remain faithful to God and make sure we're always getting our information from Him. How would God do it? What would God say about it? What's the godly way to do it? Because when we do it the way the world says do it, it may work for a while. But judgment is coming. Judgment is coming. Okay, let's bow our heads. Before we bow our heads, so I just remind you, so we're reminding everybody to stay.